Like what? Tell me. I'm curious.
No.
Let me know.
Simply, I was a great daydreamer.
Okay. You're like,
And-
hello, Nelson.
Yeah, hello.
I'm back.
My teachers in the 6th grade, 7th grade, high school, and so forth, they would think that I was on another planet because there'd be this look in my eyes, but I was just daydreaming about things that I wanted to have or to do or to accomplish. And my belief is that we all have dreams and that you should walk into your dream. It's not behind plexiglass. You're not separated from it. It is your dream, and you should spend a fair amount of your time doing whatever is necessary to take steps to walk into that dream. So there I was in Niagara Falls, New York, in public housing project, and as a nerdy kid who wanted to have toys that we couldn't afford, and do things that we couldn't afford, and most of all to have electronics gear that I could never afford.
Right.
But not never, but couldn't afford it
That
when
time.
the dreams came along.
Yeah.
And so media, electronic media, radio, and then television became my view on the outside world. And these people who I heard from New York and saw on Ed Sullivan in the studio in New York or the Today Show from New York, they always seemed to be having such a great time, and they were smart and they were articulate and they seemed to be having a wonderful time. And so my dream was that if I could walk into the dream of being actually on the radio, since I was a shy kid, and that would be open up the world for me.
Right,
So
right.
the principle of walking into the mental picture was established with me when I was 12, 13, 14.
Where did you get that concept from? Who instilled that concept?
I think that one was just a discovery. I mean, I the first book I read, full-length book, was in that period was the biography of Thomas Edison, the great inventor.
Oh.
And here was a man who didn't sleep very much, and so he had a lot of daydreams, whether it was the light bulb or various other of the inventions. People ought to be able to record sound, he said, and they went about him and his associates. It wasn't all fully from his mind. And so his core group of people dreamed dreams, and then they walked into it by creating the pieces necessary. And that is perhaps where I was first inspired to think, it's got to start in here. And if it starts in here and you behave as though that could become the reality, whether it's 10 minutes or 10 years,
Right.
it quite often will become the reality.
Right. Let me ask you a question. What if a person, because I want to get back to your story in a second, but I want to ask you this. If a person, let's say, because they're clients that I work with,
Yes.
they had a dream, and then life stepped in, and they feel that their dream is lost, and then now they really can't hear their dream anymore, and they really don't know what the dream is anymore. What would you say to that person?
Wow, that's a serious question. I think it's our responsibility to never let our dreams die. If something comes in that derails it, it has to be temporary.
But what happens if it's derailed it for a few years?
Get back to the dream. I would hope that most people keep some kind of a journal. And if that journal, I was explaining to a friend of mine with whom I just had dinner that years ago I was driving someplace in some awful traffic. This is more than 20 years ago. And the traffic was so awful. It was between cities back east. And I looked up at the sky, and there was a small plane cruising along, headed in the same direction I was going, except obviously much faster. And I wound up buying an airplane before I had a pilot's license because of that, looking up in the sky.
That's really cool.
But the whole story was that at the age of 16, I had, from my newspaper route earnings, I was a newsboy, bought one of those introductory flying lessons at the Niagara Falls Airport. I remember to this day it was in a Piper J3 called a Piper Cub, tandem seating, and they let me sit in the front and the instructor sat behind me, and that was such an experience for me. I loved it down to my core. But I couldn't afford to take flying lessons.
Right.
Wow. So I was 16, talking about returning to a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was 28 or thereabouts, and I bought an airplane. So what is that? That's a dream deferred for more than a
Right.
decade.
Right.
But it never disappeared.